This virtual tour features World War II naval aircraft that engaged enemy air and naval assets, supported Pacific Island hopping campaigns and Atlantic invasions, hunted submarines and U-boats, and trained the pilots who accomplished all these feats. The Stearman N-2S Cadet was the nation's foremost primary training aircraft during World War II. Both the Army and Navy operated standardized versions of the aircraft with interchangeable parts. While its nickname was Cadet, pilots and crew referred to them as the Stearman. The Naval Aircraft Factory's N-3N served as a primary trainer as it was extremely rugged and easy to maintain. All who flew the aircraft knew it as the Yellow Peril, a nickname prompted by its paint scheme and the fact that it was flown predominantly by inexperienced student pilots. N-3N served as a primary trainer from the late 30s to the mid-40s as both wheeled and float planes. Float-configured N-3Ns were later used for midshipman indoctrination flights at the U.S. Naval Academy until their retirement in 1961. They were the last biplane used in military service. Ryan's NR-1 Recruit was a monoplane primary training aircraft that entered service in 1941. 100 recruits were ordered and they served until 1944. Curtiss-Wright's SNC Falcon was an all-metal low-wing monoplane combat training aircraft. The Navy ordered 350 Falcons, using them as trainers and reconnaissance and general-purpose aircraft until 1944. North American Aviation's SNJ Texan was an advanced trainer, transitioned pilots from biplanes to single-winged aircraft. Texans were also used for gunnery training and instrument flying. After the war, every aviation midshipman flew the SNJ throughout basic flight training, culminating with 6 carrier landings aboard a small-deck aircraft carrier. 2000 Vultee SNV Valiants were used as an intermediate trainer during World War II. It introduced student pilots to a heavier, higher performance airplane, while providing a taste of formation flying and also instrument training. They entered service in 1940 and were declared obsolete in 1945. The Beech GB Traveler was an executive transport that also served to ferry pilots to aircraft factories who would then deliver new planes to the fleet. 342 Travelers were ordered, with some of them sent to Britain on Lend-Lease. When the Navy acquired this Beechcraft Model 18 in 1942, it was designated the JRB-2 Expediter and was used as an aerial photography platform. It served in other roles from administrative and logistic support to training. Aviators not assigned to operational squadrons relied on the JRB to maintain their flying proficiency so they would continue collecting hazard duty pay. The Navy and Marine Corps flew them for 3 decades, with the designation changing to SNB-5P then finally RC-45J. Cessna's JRC transported ferry pilots back to their bases at the end of their delivery flights. It was designated UC-78 for Army Air Corps bomber training, where trainees affectionately called it the Bamboo Bomber. Douglas's A-26 Invader was an Army shore-based medium bomber that operated through the early part of the Vietnam War. The Navy designated them JD-1 and used them for secondary tasks such as target towing and controlling KD target drones. Schweitzer's LNS-1 was used to train glider pilots in executing airborne assaults. Grumman's J-2F Duck served with all service branches during World War II. Ducks performed many roles, including transport, patrol, anti-submarine and search and rescue missions. One J-2F, overloaded with 5 passengers and the pilot, was the last aircraft to leave Bataan before its surrender to Japan in 1942. Consolidated's PBY Catalina served with every branch of the United States Armed Forces and in the services of many other nations. They proved ideal for long-range reconnaissance, night anti-shipping, and air-sea rescue. Catalinas were the most used anti-submarine warfare aircraft in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters of World War II. They destroyed 40 U-boats, but not without losses of their own. Consolidated's PB-2Y Coronado is a large flying boat patrol bomber that was used in bombing, anti-submarine, and transport roles. Coronados participated in bombing missions against Japanese-held Wake Atoll and aerial mining operations in the air campaign against the Japanese naval base at Truk Atoll. Vought Sikorsky's OS-2U Kingfisher was the U.S. Navy's primary ship-based scout and observation aircraft during World War II. They performed a variety of roles in the Pacific, spotting naval gunfire, observation, sub-hunting, rescue and more. They were launched by ship's catapult, then were recovered using a sea sled towed just below the surface. The aircraft would land in the wake, taxi to the sled and engage it with a small hook on the bottom of the float before being craned aboard. Curtis's P-40 is displayed to honor those naval aviators who joined Colonel Claire Chennault's American Volunteer Group, better known as the Flying Tigers. The P-40 was used by most Allied powers during World War II and remained in frontline service until the end of the war. They were known as Warhawks in the Army Air Corps, but Tomahawks to many foreign users. In April 1942, 16 B-25s launched from the USS Hornet for bombing missions against industrial targets in the Japanese cities of Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, and Kobe. The material damage inflicted was minor, but it was a huge American propaganda victory. Mitsubishi's A-6M0 was a Japanese long-range carrier-based fighter aircraft. It was considered the world's most capable carrier-based fighter early in World War II, combining excellent maneuverability and very long range. In early combat, the Zero had an outstanding kill ratio of 12-1, but by mid-1942 Allied pilots met the Zero on generally equal terms. By 1944 the Zero was a largely outdated fighter aircraft. Kawanishi's N-1K2 Shidenkai revealed significant Japanese technological advances during the war. One unique design feature was an automatic flap system used not only for landing, but also aiding in slow-speed air combat maneuvering. Codenamed George by the Allies, it proved itself as a worthy opponent. However, it arrived too late in the war to make a difference. The German Messerschmitt's Me-262 was the first operational jet fighter. Missions began in August 1944 with German pilots claiming the downing of 19 Allied aircraft for the loss of only 6. Fortunately for the Allies, Hitler pushed bombers over fighters, delaying their deployment. It was superior to all Allied fighters, accounting for 542 Allied aircraft destroyed while losing 100. Sikorsky's HNS Hoverfly was intended to only train pilots, but it was integral in developing the rescue hoist. It was the first helicopter to fly from a ship at sea and eventually participated in life-saving operations. Interstate's TDR-1 was the world's first legitimate cruise missile. It could be piloted to ferry the aircraft to a destination, and it could be radio-controlled for use as a drone. During a 2-month period, 50 drones were launched with 31 hits recorded on anti-aircraft sites, bridges, airfields and grounded ships. Brewster's SB-2A Buccaneer was a dive bomber but was a major disappointment. It lacked ruggedness and developed many stress problems that made it unreliable even for use as a trainer. Buccaneers were never used in combat, but instead flew as target tugs or were used as ground maintenance trainers. Some of the later planes went directly from the assembly line to the scrap heap. Douglas's SBD Dauntless proved a highly effective dive bomber, its unique split flap and dive brake allowing for very steep and accurate diving attacks. It was the Navy's main carrier-based scout dive bomber from mid-1940 through mid-1944. The first major Dauntless combat was at the Battle of the Coral Sea, where SBDs and TBD Devastators sank the Japanese light aircraft carrier Shoho and damaged the Japanese fleet carrier Shokaku. During the Battle of Midway, SBDs sank 3 Japanese carriers and heavily damaged a 4th that was sunk the following day. Vaught's SB-2U Vindicator was the Navy's first monoplane scout torpedo bomber. The Vindicator's sole combat came in June 1942 at the Battle of Midway. Of the 12 Vindicators flown by Marines, 6 were lost and 5 were severely damaged. Grumman's TBF Avenger served as the Navy's standard torpedo bomber throughout the war. At the Midway Battle, Avengers attacked the Japanese fleet but were mauled by enemy fighters. Of the 6 attacking Avengers, 5 were shot down and the surviving aircraft was badly damaged. They survived to become the most effective and widely used torpedo bomber of World War II, sharing credit for sinking the super battleships Yamato and Musashi. Until late 1942, the Marine Corps and Navy's premier fighter was Grumman's F-4F Wildcat. The Wildcat was generally outperformed by the Mitsubishi Zero, but held its own partly because, with relatively heavy armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, the airframe could survive far more damage than its lightweight, unarmored Japanese rival. The Wildcat's unique wing folding mechanism virtually doubled the fighter capacity aboard carriers, making the F-4F an ideal aircraft for escort and light carrier operations. By war's end, the stubby fighter listed 58 aces among its pilots. Vaught's F-4U Corsair had a long nose, inverted gull wings, and tall landing gear to accommodate its oversized propeller. The cockpit placement resulted in poor visibility during landing approaches, plus they exhibited adverse stall characteristics at slow approach speeds, and tended to bounce on landing. These factors delayed introduction to carrier service, leaving it to Marine land-based squadrons early on. Corsair served on aircraft carriers in the latter part of World War II. Grumman's F-6F Hellcat was one of the top World War II fighters. By 1944, the Hellcat was the Navy's standard carrier-based fighter. Hellcats outperformed the Japanese Zero and accounted for 75% of the Navy's air-to-air victories. Pilots loved them because they were easy to operate yet could outperform the enemy. USS Lexington was our second carrier. During the Battle of the Coral Sea, she participated in sinking one Japanese carrier and damaging 2 others before being hit by 2 torpedoes and 3 bombs that led to her being scuttled. I hope you enjoyed this virtual tour of the World War II era aircraft displayed at the National Naval Aviation Museum.